Good afternoon, and welcome to the Fiscal Year 20 Grant to Provide Volunteer Taxpayer Assistance Services webinar. My name is Jessica Delcid, and I'm the Grant Coordinator and the Volunteer Outreach Coordinator of the Outreach team within the Income Tax and Withholding Division at the Minnesota Department of Revenue. I administer the grant to provide volunteer taxpayer assistance services, and I educate volunteers on Minnesota tax laws. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can submit them through the chat feature and send them to all participants or to Sarah Bjorklund, and I will answer them at the end of this presentation. This is just a disclaimer. The presentation is for educational purposes only. It's meant to accompany an oral presentation and not be used as a standalone document. The presentation is based on the facts and circumstances being discussed and on the laws in effect when it is presented. It does not supersede or alter any provisions of Minnesota laws, administrative rules, court cases, or revenue notices. If you have any grant-related questions, you can call us or send us an email. Today's agenda. We will cover the grant overview, grant requests for proposal process, grant awards, reimbursement of grant funds, deadlines and due dates, and we'll also have time to answer your questions. Revenue has a new website. It's improved design and content. It's easier navigation. It is mobile responsive, and it has a task-based layout. You will still be able to find the grant RFP and any other grant-related documents by typing grant into the search box at the upper right-hand corner of the website. The Commissioner of Revenue has authority to issue grants totaling $1.2 million for the 2020-2021 biennium. The request for proposals, or RFP, will be made available July 10th, 2019, and it's for $600,000 for fiscal year 2020. The grant is available to nonprofit organizations that qualify under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code to receive grants to coordinate, facilitate, encourage, and provide volunteer taxpayer assistance services. Organizations applying for this grant must be registered with the Internal Revenue Service as part of the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, the VITA, or Tax Counseling for the Elderly, TCE program. Volunteer taxpayer assistance services are accounting and tax preparation services provided by volunteers to Minnesotans who are low income, elderly, and disadvantaged. This includes filing federal and Minnesota income tax and property tax returns and representing qualifying residents before the department and the IRS. So low income, that is households making less than $55,000 annually, and it follows the earned income tax guidelines. Elderly and disadvantaged, that is individuals with limited English speaking ability, disabilities, among many others identified in the RFP. Organizations must operate within the established guidelines and requirements of the VITA and TCE programs. They must be compliant with Minnesota tax and information reporting requirements and be compliant with last year's grant contract if a previous grant recipient. The Minnesota Department of Revenue will award grants for fiscal year 2020 to increase free tax preparation assistance services for Minnesotans who are low income, elderly, and disadvantaged. In awarding grants for fiscal year 2020, we set the following program goals. 1, to increase multilingual volunteers at free tax preparation sites throughout Minnesota. There is a need throughout the state to increase the number of languages spoken at free tax preparation sites. The grant proposal review team will award more points to organizations who provide language assistance beyond English. And number 2, expanding the number of free tax preparation sites in areas with underserved populations lacking access to free tax preparation services, specifically in Greater Minnesota, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, North Minneapolis, and Northeast Minneapolis. There are a lot of areas in Minnesota without free tax preparation services. For this year, we would like to focus on these underserved areas. Again, they are Greater Minnesota, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, North Minneapolis, and Northeast Minneapolis. The grant process proposal review team will award more points to organizations opening sites in these areas. The state of Minnesota is committed to advancing diversity and inclusion in its own organization and in the volunteer programs that support Minnesota taxpayers. Demonstrating your organization's commitment to diversity and inclusion is an important part of the grant application process. Diversity is the mix of human differences and similarities that impact our interactions and access to opportunity. The concept of diversity extends to all facets of life, including, but not limited to, age, color, education, ethnicity, gender identity and expression, language, marital status, race, religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, and veteran status. Inclusion is welcoming individual differences and similarities, respecting others, treating people equitably, and forming meaningful connections so that every person's contributions are recognized, accepted, and incorporated. The grant application process includes some new questions this year. Those questions include listing all of the languages spoken by your volunteers and staff who will be available at your free tax preparation sites, describing how your organization is increasing the diversity and inclusiveness of your volunteers and customers at your free tax preparation sites, and describing how you prepare your volunteers to work with others who come from different backgrounds than their own. So religions, culture, education, age, etc. We encourage you to review the RFP closely to ensure you address these important questions thoroughly. We would also like to share this short video with you about diversity and inclusion. A grant workbook is used for all organizations to submit grant proposal information correctly and consistently. The grant workbook is in a fillable PDF format, and the PDF grant workbook must be submitted via email. The text boxes do not expand. If you need additional space, you can attach additional pages to the email. The authorized representative must manually sign the cover sheet. They should print the cover sheet, sign it, scan it, and submit it with the workbook. All grant proposals must be submitted using the grant workbook. You can attach any relevant or required documentation to help support your organization's proposal if it's not included in this grant workbook. The grant workbook will be available on our website on July 10th. You can search under grant. And proposals are due August 15th, 2019. Check the RFP for all documents that are required to be submitted with your proposals. To be eligible for review, your application must be complete and on time, and your organization must not be past due on a debt collected by the department. Grant deadlines will not be extended, and additional time will not be given to submit any information. We compiled a list of tips for completing your proposal. Completing the workbook will ensure you provide all required documentation. Complete all required forms. If there's missing information, it will be disqualified. Be clear and concise. Use more than one reviewer, and do not wait until the last minute to submit. We review department records when we receive proposals and before we reimburse grant funds. During our review, we will verify your organization is meeting payment obligations to government agencies, thereby preventing revenue recapture or offset of grant funds. We will not distribute grant funds if we are collecting a past due balance your organization owes to government organizations. Grant funds will be awarded as one lump sum to your organization, meaning we won't tell you how much you have available to spend in each category. Proposal expense requests and reimbursement requests must be separated into 4 categories: equipment and accessories, advertising, salaries, and other expenses. You may spend the total amount awarded in any of these 4 categories. Volunteer recognition items are limited to $10 per person. You may not purchase gift cards for volunteer recognition. Food and beverages for volunteers may not exceed $500 per organization. Review the RFP for a full list of allowed and disallowed expenses. Salary funding cannot be used to pay volunteers. Volunteer activities include, but are not limited to, conducting intake, preparing tax returns, doing quality review, and interpreting. Grant funds also may not be used to pay for administrative costs for preparing the grant application. Grant funds used for salaries must be paid to individuals specifically for services performed for the Volunteer Taxpayer Assistance Program. This must be well documented so that you can request reimbursement, and I will discuss this more in detail in a little bit. If your organization plans to request grant funds for print advertisements, a copy of that advertisement must be reviewed and approved by the department before printing. Advertising must be reviewed and approved each grant period. If advertisements are not approved by the department prior to being printed, grant funds for print advertisements will not be reimbursed. If your organization requests advertising funds but does not plan to use print advertisements, provide a detailed description of your marketing plan. If your organization is awarded grant funds, you can submit print advertisements for review anytime after October 1st, 2019. Do not submit them with your application. You will receive an email confirmation once advertising has been approved. The department reimburses grant funds, meaning your organization must have incurred the expenses before requesting reimbursement of grant funds. The expenses must have been incurred between October 1st, 2019, or when the contract has been signed by all parties, and August 31st of 2020. When can organizations request reimbursement of grant funds? New this year, there's a change from previous years as to when you can request reimbursement of grant funds. For fiscal year 20, your organization may submit reimbursement requests at the following times: when the progress report is due on February 14th, 2020, when the final report is due May 1st, 2020, and before August 31st, 2020. You may request reimbursement for up to half of your grant award when the progress report is due, and the second half when the final report is due. Any remaining grant award amounts may be requested through August 31st, 2020. We will not accept reimbursement requests after August 31st, 2020. And any organization receiving $50,000 or more in grant funds will have a monitoring visit conducted before final reimbursement is approved. Organizations will need to complete a reimbursement request expense tracking sheet that will detail the specific expenses of the reimbursement request. The fiscal year 20 reimbursement request expense tracking sheet will be available on our grant webpage. Organizations will have to include supporting documentation for all expenses within the reimbursement request, such as payroll records, timesheets, itemized receipts, invoices or purchase orders, mileage logs, payment records, etc., to prove that expenses are reasonable, necessary, and allowable within the guidelines of the grant contract. General ledgers alone are not adequate information. Salaries, you'll want to include names, position, pay rate, and the time allocated to the tax program if they're involved in other functions of your organization. Acceptable salary documentation includes payroll records, labor allocation detail reports, timesheets, etc. Include receipts, canceled checks, or a bank statement for each expense showing that it has been paid. Documentation should be organized so that it flows in the order that it is listed on the reimbursement request expense tracking sheet so that it is easy to review. You can highlight or circle the dates and the expenses and organize it into one PDF or as few as possible if it's a large document. Requests for reimbursement without proper supporting documentation will not be accepted. The specifics on how to submit a question is detailed in the RFP for your reference. Questions can be submitted anytime through August 2nd, with all questions answered by August 9th. All questions received during this time and the answers provided will be posted to our website for anyone to review. Proposals must be received by August 15th. It's your responsibility to ensure a timely proposal is received by the due date, and proposals will not be considered if received late. You will receive an email confirmation once the proposal has been received. Once all proposals have been received, our grant review team will evaluate all complete proposals to determine awards. Details of exactly how proposals are scored based on need, impact, and performance will be outlined in the RFP. Review and evaluation of grant proposals will take place between August 16th and September 30th, 2019. And you will be notified of selection or non-selection on or before October 1st, 2019. New this year, progress reports are required for all organizations who are awarded grant funds. Fiscal year 20 progress reports will be due February 14th after training for the 2019 tax season has ended and a few weeks into the filing season. The goal is for organizations to report more specifically on preparations for the filing season on the progress report and report on how the entire filing season went on the final report. We are requiring progress reports for all organizations this year so that we can capture some important information from all grantees, such as how it went recruiting multilingual volunteers and the languages they speak, so we can continue making this better for everyone. Final reports are required for all organizations that are awarded grant funds. Fiscal year 20 final reports will be due May 1st, 2020. You can still submit reimbursement requests until August 31st, 2020, but again, final reports are due May 1st. You can always submit progress and final reports before their due dates if you feel like you can adequately report on the questions in the reports. We moved the due date of the final report to May 1st to allow the department time to evaluate the performance of the grantees and the successes of the grant cycle before drafting the RFP for the next grant cycle. If your site has summer hours, we realize your final report will not reflect returns prepared after April 30th, but we do have access to this information. At this time, I will take any questions that you have. You may submit them through the chat feature and send them to all participants or to Sarah Bjorklund. If you have additional questions relating to the grant, you can send an email to the address listed here on the screen. And again, the PowerPoint and all questions and answers from this webinar will be posted on the grant website before July 10th. Thank you for your time today. Have a great afternoon.